Welcome to the Borderlands 3 tips and tricks video. If you're new to Borderlands 3, this is an excellent time to get into the game. The first year of DLC content is complete, and the second year of DLC content is on the way. So if you're new to Borderlands, I encourage you to watch this video. I will walk you through everything you need to know. If you're brand new to the Borderlands series, I suggest starting a new game at level 1. It will help you walk through basic game mechanics. You'll learn how to use a shield, you will learn how to use grenade mods, and you will also learn how to switch between your two primary weapons. In addition to that, I recommend playing through the entire basic campaign before going on to any of the DLC content. You don't get any of your additional weapon slots unlocked by playing the DLC content. You can only do that by playing through the primary campaign. So I suggest if you're brand new to the game, go ahead and just play through the basic campaign starting at level 1. There are 4 characters in Borderlands 3. Each one is slightly different, and quite honestly, you can't go wrong with any of them that you pick. Each character will have 4 different skill trees that you can explore, and different abilities and different special abilities in each of those skill trees. First is Amara. Think of her as a gun-wielding psychic. She's able to channel cosmic energy and use guns effectively. Next, we have Flak, which is a robotic Beastmaster. Each of his builds has a different pet, so each of the skill trees will have a different pet and different special abilities for those pets. Zane is sort of the technical operative. He has a bunch of different special abilities. He's the only character in the game that can utilize 2 different special abilities at the same time. Finally, we have Moze, who is a mech soldier. That means that she has this enormous mech that she can climb into and fight. Additionally, some of the newer skill trees allow her to summon a smaller version of that mech that fights on the battlefield. But whatever character you pick, you're not going to go wrong. When you begin Borderlands 3, your character will have a limited number of equipment slots open to that character. The first 2 weapon slots will be available. In addition, the shield and grenade mod slots will also be available. When you play through the main campaign, it will unlock additional slots. As an example, you will be able to unlock 2 additional weapons. You will also be able to unlock a class mod slot, and in addition, an artifact slot as well. So playing through the main campaign is extremely important. Without playing through it, you won't access and be able to open these additional slots on your character. By playing the DLC content, it will not unlock these additional slots. This is why I recommend playing through the main campaign first. In addition, once you finish the main campaign storyline, it will unlock what is called Guardian ranks, and I will talk more about that later on in the video. In this game, to mantle, simply hit the jump button, hold the jump button, and it will allow you to climb on top of objects. Very helpful, very useful. It gives you an advantage. You can then fire down and attack enemies from an elevated position. Many of the anointed pieces of gear that I'll talk about later will trigger off what's called slam. So once you're at an elevated position, jump off and hit the crouch button. In midair, you'll slam the ground and knock back your enemies. And the last of the sort of special movement abilities is called Slide. There are also anointed pieces of gear that will trigger off of Slide. So to do this action, simply run and sprint, then hit the crouch button and you will slide under objects. Very helpful if you're trying to get behind cover and you're taking a lot of fire. Shields in Borderlands are pretty easy to understand. This one has a capacity of 105, which means it can take 105 points of damage before it goes down. Next is the recharge delay. It's how long it will take for the shield to start recharging after it breaks. So when it breaks, it means that its entire capacity has been spent. So in this case, it'll take 7.5 seconds for the shield to start recharging. And then next is the recharge rate, and that's per second. So 14 points of the shield will recharge every second after the 7.5 seconds have occurred. So it's really critical that you understand how the shields work, especially when you're upgrading your shields. You want to make sure that you have something with a low recharge delay and a high recharge rate. Those are the most beneficial shields. The shield energy will be located in the bottom left-hand corner of the screen. In this case, it says 115. One quick final note on shields. If you get struck and damaged while your shield is in the middle of recharging, it will stop recharging, and then you have to wait for the recharge delay to occur again. So I kind of recommend, if you're taking a lot of fire and you're having a hard time, go ahead and hide behind some cover to allow your shield to fully recharge. If you don't, let's say you step out and it's recharging, you get hit, it will immediately stop recharging the shield. When your shield breaks in the game and you run out of life, you will drop onto the ground and then you have to fight for your life. What that means is that you have to defeat an enemy, or your pet has to defeat an enemy in the time frame, otherwise you are eliminated from the game and you have to go back to a respawn point. So as shown in the video, the character is fighting for his life, he defeats the enemy, gets up, and now has a second wind. There are several types of elemental weapons that are present in Borderlands. You have radiation shock, incendiary, you also have cryogenic weapons, and you also have these green corrosive weapons. I'm going to go into detail on what these are used for and how to effectively use these weapons in Borderlands 3. One of the damage types that's available in Borderlands Elemental is shock damage. This is a blue lightning bolt that appears on the weapons. It is used for cutting through shields, specifically the blue bars that you see on enemies. As you can see, when I hit something with a blue bar, it rapidly eats through the shield. Cryogenic damage is depicted in the game by a snowflake elemental icon on your weapons. When you hit something with elemental ice damage, it'll first slow the enemy, and it can eventually freeze the enemy in place. Once an enemy is frozen in place, it will suffer additional critical hit damage. Radiation damage is denoted by a yellow radiation symbol on the weapon. Radiation is a damage over time effect, as is most elementals. Now, when you hit something with a radiation style weapon and it perishes in combat, it will explode and contaminate all enemies around it with radiation as well. This is a great way to spread a damage over time effect on multiple enemies when you're playing the game. I highly recommend it. It's actually one of my favorite elements in Borderlands 3. Next up is Incendiary, which is denoted by the orange flame icon that is located on the weapon. This type of damage affects anything with a red life bar, which is pretty much the vast majority of the enemies in the game will have some sort of red component to their life bar. So this is an excellent way to burn through flesh, essentially, and do a massive amount of damage against enemies with a red life bar. Corrosive damage is denoted on weapons as a green biohazard symbol and is used for eating through armor, which is the yellow bar on enemies. As an example, we are eating through and destroying armor on yellow style enemy mechs in the Handsome Jackpot. So if you want to eat through yellow enemies or armor on enemies, use the green corrosive style weapons. As you start leveling your character, you're going to be able to start spending your skill points on the different abilities. What I recommend is going ahead and looking at one of the caps. So this is going to be the cap of this skill tree. They also call it the capstone. This is something that takes you a while to get to. So as you can see on the left-hand side, it says it takes 25 skill points in the tree to unlock the skill at the bottom. As we start going upwards through this, it goes to 20 and then 15 and then 10 and then 5. What this means is that in order to access the lower rows in this skill tree, we're going to have to spend points up here on the first row. So as an example, we have the Demolition Woman skill tree. If I want to progress to the second row, I need to spend a total of 5 points on the top row. So in this case, I'm going to add 2 points to this skill. I'm going to add 1 to this point and then 2 on this. As you can see, immediately when I spend that 5th point, it unlocks my ability to start spending points in the next row. In addition, the action skill augments unlock, and in this case, an additional action skill unlocks as well. So if I want to get down to these lower tiers, I'm going to spend 5 points here. Now it unlocks the next tree. I'm going to have to spend a total of 5 additional points to get on to the next tree. So in this case, there's only 4 in this row. I can spend a point in any of the previous rows as well to unlock the next row. So I'm going to continue moving on. And now I'm moving on to this row as well. And then finally, after spending all of those points, I can get the capstone on this skill tree. Typically, these are very powerful and very distinctive skills that really help you customize your character. So in this case, I'm going to purchase this capstone, and I've kind of filled out this skill tree nicely. What makes this game so amazing is that I still have 37 points left over, and I can go into additional skill trees and start customizing as well. So maybe I want to then start going down the Bear Mother tree. I can do this as well and start customizing this build out as well. So as you can see, I can work my way down through this tree. And I can get a second capstone. Now I still have 11 points left over. I can invest in this purple tree. I can invest back in the blue tree, or I can even start a third tree, or I can mix and match. Maybe I spend 5 points here. And then I go over to this next one and I spend an additional 5 points here. And that leaves me with 1 point to spend. But the great thing about this game is that it has a lot of different flexibility when you're picking your skills, and that makes the game a lot of fun. Now that you understand the basics on how to spend your skills, now here comes the really hard part. What do you invest in? And I always tell new players to just find one of the trees that looks interesting to them. So in this case, this skill tree is dedicated to explosives and splash damage. So think of it as you fire a projectile at an enemy, it explodes, and splash damage will hit all of the enemies around it. So in that case, if that sounds appealing to you, you should start going through this skill tree. Notice that every single skill tree for every single character has a slightly different theme. This Moze skill tree is called Shield of Retribution. It's highly defensive, so there's a lot of stuff that involves shields and shielding yourself from harm, which is kind of cool. On the next skill tree, you also have bottomless mags. So on this build, you can look at unlimited ammo. That's a pretty cool sort of concept. In some of these skills, specifically at the bottom, your guns are constantly regenerating ammo. That's a pretty cool skill. That's a pretty cool ability. And then finally, we have the Bear Mother skill tree, which really comes down to keeping your little pet robot in play as long as possible, so it extends the playtime of it by decreasing fuel consumption and things of that nature. So first and foremost, pick one of the skill trees that you're going to advance down and just enjoy it and have fun. Don't think too much about making the ultimate build. You can always respec your character later on Sanctuary. As an example, there's a respec quick change terminal. All you have to do is go down and respec. It costs a certain amount or percentage of your money, but that's okay. It allows you to try multiple builds. Now that have gone through the 4 different skill trees, it looks like Bear Mother seems like a pretty cool skill tree, so we're going to start filling that one out. First thing that you're going to do is select the skill at the top. If you notice, there's another one. We can add and attach an additional weapon to Iron Bear in the second slot. So we're going to go ahead and do that. And what this is going to do is our little Iron Bear Mech pet that's going to be following us around is going to have 2 of those grenade launchers, 1 on each arm. Now what we're going to do is just start spending our points. This is a lot easier when you're first starting out the game. You don't have a lot of options. So all I recommend to a new player is take each skill point in each level one at a time. If you try your action skill and you don't like it, you don't have to respec your character. You can simply swap out your weapons. So in this case, maybe we tried the little mech, and that's not really resonating with us. That's not part of our playstyle. So instead we go with looking at the railgun and the grenade launcher on your mech. That might be better suited for your playstyle. So we don't have to respec. We can try all of these skills at the top for free, and we can change them out whenever we feel like it. Now when I start investing and spending points down here, those are going to be locked in, and I won't be able to change those unless I go to the skill respec station. So just take it one level at a time. In this case, you start on the skill tree, you only have 3 different options. So look through the options and look to see what would really interest you when you're playing the game. So in this case, you have 3 different options. Pick one and then move on, and then the next level you're going to get another point and another point and another point until you max out your character. In that case, you're going to have a ton of skill points to spend, and it makes it a lot more difficult to spec your character. But like I said, just take it one level at a time. Don't get overwhelmed by the amount of choices that you have. You can deal with that later as you have more experience with the game. There are multiple tiers of gear in Borderlands 3. First is the white tier, followed by the green tier. Next goes blue, purple, and then finally orange. In that order, you see a general increase in the power and effectiveness of that gear. Now, when you get to the purples and the oranges, just because it's orange doesn't necessarily mean that it's better than a purple. Make sure that the weapon is effective and make sure that it's usable. With any type of gear, especially as you're advancing through the game, oftentimes you'll be using some of this green and blue style gear throughout the game. Make sure it's usable first and foremost. The color matters to some extent, but make sure that you can actually hit something with it and it's effective. When you hit the level maximum for your character, that's the perfect and ideal time to start farming for gear. You really don't want to spend a lot of time farming gear until you hit that maximum level. Then when you do, you want to try to maximize your gear by the Mayhem level. And what's interesting about this game is that when you start at maximum level and you start farming gear, you want to start on the lower Mayhem levels. And I'll walk you through what that means in just a few clips. But first and foremost, when you're farming gear, what you're looking for are called anointments. So as an example, here's a shield on the screen, and you can see in yellow it says that it's anointed. Right below it, we also have a grenade that's anointed as well. When you're farming gear and you want to really enhance your character, focus first and foremost on the anointments on your shield and your grenade mod. These 2 anointments are going to be active all of the time. If you have an anointment on a weapon, that anointment is only active when you have that weapon in your hands. So although you can be carrying 4 different anointed weapons, the anointment will only be active when you're using that weapon. Whereas the shield and grenade mod anointments are active all the time. So these are the 2 most important. I'm going to give you a quick note about anointments, and this is really pertinent to your character build. Whatever sort of special ability you're using, so as an example, if I'm on flak, I'm using rack attack, and the cooldown on this skill is every 18 seconds. That's going to be very pertinent to how you want to build and use your anointments on your weapons. So if I'm using my action skill very, very often, I want to look for anointments that trigger when the action skill ends. So that's very important that I match the anointments on the weapons to the style of my skills and how I play the game. So first and foremost, when you're building your character, you want to build your character based upon your play style and the effectiveness on how you play the game. Secondarily, then you're going to start looking for anointments that enhance your play style. It's really easy to get caught up and try to make unique different play styles. That's a lot of fun, but the problem is the gear doesn't necessarily always match that. So what I recommend is pick your play style first. So pick your skills, pick your loadout on your skills, and then focus on getting the anointments and the gear. Otherwise, it's going to be really scattered. It's going to be difficult when you're farming. It's going to be overwhelming. You're not going to know what to focus on. But if you already have your character picked out, you know what your build is, then look for the anointments that help with your build and your playstyle. Here's another example of building your anointments and selecting your anointments based upon your build. In this case, we are using a Zane character, and the build has the gun drone and digiclone out, and the point of the build is to keep them out as long as possible because they're inflicting damage to your enemies. So for this build, I want to look for anointments that trigger while the action skill is active. Since I'm trying to extend how long my special abilities are active, I want to find weapons and guns that correspond with that. So as an example, the gun drone known as Sentinel is active. I can gain 100% damage as bonus cryo damage. So I'm trying to keep my gun drone out all the time anyway. So if I find a weapon that enhances that playstyle, that's really what I'm looking for. Here's another example. This hazardous beacon, while an action skill is active, weapon damage is increased by 200%. That's amazing. That's fantastic. Since both of my special abilities are active almost all the time when I'm playing this build, I'm going to be able to use this skill all the time. Next, we're going to talk about Mayhem mode in Borderlands 3. Think of Mayhem as a selectable difficulty level for the game. It ranges anywhere from 1 to 11, and as you begin to increase the Mayhem level on the game, you're going to notice that the experience points and the amount of loot and the quality of the gear is going to increase. So as I start moving this slider across, you're noticing all of these things are adding up. You're also going to notice that modifiers start appearing, and these modifiers are typically what the enemies are going to be using against you, and these are going to be different for each and every Mayhem mode. The point of this is that it's going to be different, and the feel of the game is going to be different, and thus the weapons that you're going to have loaded out are going to impact these modifiers in different ways. So it kind of keeps the game fresh. It keeps you on your toes. It kind of forces you to play multiple different styles. You can't just have one set of guns. It allows you to explore other sets of guns and use them for these different modes of play. It's a lot of fun. It's really challenging, and this is probably where the game gets most exciting because the loot gets absolutely amazing. As you start going through the Mayhem modes and the Mayhem levels, the gear that drops, some of it will only appear at the higher Mayhem levels, so you'll only be able to access that gear at those higher levels, so that's pretty exciting as well. Here's a quick note about Mayhem modes. The addition of Mayhem 11 removes all of the modifiers from the game. It also decreases the amount of XP that you're earning and the loot. So as you can see, as we toggle back and forth, if you look, the modifiers disappear, and so do the rewards. So be careful and cautious. It depends on kind of what you're looking for. I myself like getting maximum XP and maximum loot when I play the game. But sometimes some of those special abilities can be a little bit annoying, with the skulls chase you around and insta-kill you, things of that nature. So it's totally up to you. It's totally up to your playstyle. But just know, if you're trying to get all of the Guardian ranks unlocked, you're going to gain a lot more experience on Mayhem 10. Next, we're going to talk about Guardian ranks. This is an alternate way to enhance and level not just your primary character, but all of the characters that you have. What's great about this is once you unlock it, with finishing the playthrough of the main campaign on any of the characters, all of your characters from that point forward can access these Guardian ranks. So think of it this way. Once you have a maxed out character, whatever the level cap is, you can continue to enhance and advance your characters by use of these skills. So as you can see on the screen, there are 3 different lines: Enforcer, Survivor, and finally Hunter. Every time you would pass a Guardian rank, you can then increase one of the corresponding bonus stats that's associated with that column. So as an example, under Enforcer, you can increase critical damage, grenade damage, gunfire rate, melee damage, and vehicle damage. And what's great about this as well is that once you start going down a certain tree, so let's say I pass 10 levels or 10 Guardian ranks in the Enforcer line, I can then unlock this weapon skin that you see at the top. If I continue down this tree, then it's going to cost 15 tokens to unlock this additional skill. So as you see, there are some pretty cool and potent skills that are available to you and all of your characters. So I highly recommend finishing the game first with one character, finish that campaign, and unlock the Guardian ranks. Now, any other time you play a new character, you're going to be earning both experience bars at the same time. So you can level up that character at the same time you are also gaining Guardian ranks. So there's some pretty cool different abilities that are present in these lines. So I always recommend get one sort of skill and then move on to see what other skills you potentially want. I see a lot of players too, they'll go down one of the skill lines as opposed to another one and try to max that out as best as possible before trying a different tree. Some people kind of mix and match. They'll try to get, let's say, 15 points here, and then 15 points here, and then 15 points here, and then they'll try to keep their character kind of balanced, and they work their way through the Guardian ranks in this sort of manner. That's great too. You can balance your character as well. Just understand too that this is a law of diminishing returns. Each Guardian rank is going to require more experience to complete. In addition to that, the bonus stats are going to start decaying, so you're going to get less and less of a bonus for each Guardian rank that you spend. I want to thank you for joining me on this Borderlands 3 introductory video. This game has a lot to offer, and there's a lot going on in the game. There's by no means any way for me to describe every aspect of this game in only a 25-minute video, but hopefully you've learned the basics that you need to succeed and start having a lot of fun with this great first-person shooter. I want to thank you for your time again, and as always, have fun gaming.